Today's episode is brought to you by the Reese Hotel in Queenstown. Now is the time to book your 5-star hotel stay at the Reese Hotel in Queenstown, proudly New Zealand owned and operated. With stunning lake and mountain views, courtesy town shuttles, a private beach and jetty access, and staff that'll blow your socks off with their impeccable service, it's definitely not your average weekend getaway. Guests can experience the talents of Chef Corey Hume at True South Dining Room for some exquisite locally sourced produce, or their lobby bar with the award-winning wine cellar bursting with local and international vintages, or simply work your way through their cocktail list. Perhaps if the mood strikes, break out the in-house Bentley Continental for a quick lakeside spin, or an airport pickup with a difference. The video you're seeing now, I took over the weekend with my stay up there. This is the view from one of their balconies. While all the rooms come with balconies and heaps of space to enjoy these views, now is the time to book your weekend getaway with a special discounted price. Book now via the hotel website. That's the Reese, THEREES.co.nz. Use the promo code COVID-19, one word, to receive a special offer of 10% off any accommodation. That's thereese.co.nz and use the promo code COVID-19 for your getaway.
The Behemoth Brewing Company presents the Department of Conversation with Pat Brittenden. Behemoth, give me something hoppy.
Well, you might know her from numerous TV appearances, comedian extraordinaire, awards out the wazoo. In fact, congratulations on an award just on the week gone. They call it the Guildies. What's the name of the awards that they just hold?
Yeah, it's the Guildies. It's the New Zealand Comedy Guild Awards. So it's our kind of like our work awards, I suppose, because it's all like
most people say it's like the Oscars. Most people who are doing award, they're like, it's like the Oscars of comedy.
Yeah,
just say that.
It's basically the Oscars.
Basically the Oscars. And what did you win?
I got breakthrough comedian for the Upper North Island.
Very cool. So it's kind of like cricket.
Yeah.
You've got an Upper North Island, you've got a Central Districts, you've got a Wellington comedian. Nice. And then I bet there's just one for the South Island, isn't there? Is there just one for the South Island?
There is. Yeah, there is. Yeah.
I don't get that. I never understand that. It's like, we'll go Auckland and North, we'll go Auckland down to Taupo, we'll go Taupo to Wellington, we'll go Wellington, and then we'll go all of the fucking South Island. It's crazy.
Yeah. There's like Upper North Island, which is, I guess, just kind of Auckland upwards maybe, and then it's Lower North Island, and then South Island. But I'm from Christchurch. I started in my career in Christchurch, and the scene was definitely a lot smaller then. It's bigger now, but it's small but strong, I would say.
Just because of your age, does that mean you were starting kind of in and around maybe not long after the earthquakes in Christchurch? They must have been fairly close to when you were sort of kicking your career off.
No, I started in 2016, but I was in my last year of high school when the earthquakes happened. So I was 17 when the February one happened. I'm 28 now.
Yeah, madness. I mean, it's interesting how people's personal experience impact and influence their comedy or their art in general. I noticed I was watching a video of you the other day, and I enjoyed very much you doing a cooking show. And one of the first things you said is, "Now, what's a food processor again?" I thought that was quite a nice mix of it's like I was just imagining someone like doing a cricket show and go, "Now, what are wickets again? What is the part of it?"
That's also what I would say if I was watching cricket. I'm not a fan of cricket. I don't like their outfits.
I thought if you came from Christchurch, you had to be a sports fan no matter what. I thought that was the rules.
I like I don't mind rugby. Don't mind a bit of rugby. My high school boyfriend's family had season passes for the Crusaders, and that was the year that Sonny Bill played. So that's how I got into rugby. Became very, very invested. But I don't really. I think I don't care about sports, but if I'm watching them, I'm like the most invested in it that I've ever been in anything in my life.
I'm interested to have a chat with you about what you do for a job, what you do for a living. Comedian. Actually, someone said to me this last night. I had this whole conversation with someone about what is a female comedian called these days? Because we're going through that transitional period of is it? Because it used to be a comedian, and then
Yeah.
everyone was comedians. And like at the awards, was there male, female categories and the awards just gone, or was it just comedian, full stop?
Yeah. There was only one category that's like segregated. So it was best female comedian and best male comedian. But other than that, it's all just best joke or best like online presence, stuff like that. So but they're looking at doing like I guess they're trying to figure out how to make it more inclusive of like the LGBTQ community and in terms of like the gender separation of the awards. But I'm not really sure. I'm not in charge of that. Thank God.
I thought you were.
No, I'm not in charge of anything, which is probably for the best, I think.
It's fascinating, isn't it? Because we're doing that at the moment with, like, we joked about the Oscars before. Is there going to be a stage where it's just actor, full stop, everyone's in it? And if there is, what does that mean? Does that mean one sex as opposed to gender will dominate or not? I don't know. It's a fascinating time.
Yeah, I think the whole thing is like it's a delicate situation. I think I don't want there to just be one category because then I have less of a chance of winning. So that's I'm very selfish. But I think it's interesting. I think in terms of like I prefer to be called a comic, like rather than female comedian. But I'll talk about the term female comedian. I'm not a huge fan of because it seems like there's comedians and then there's like the girls, so when I'm better than every man I know, so but then I will use that term if I'm talking about like the girls I work with, I suppose. I don't know, I probably there needs to be a better way of saying it. I think that doesn't sound so like female, because you wouldn't say like female doctor or female. But
you're just a doctor.
One time I did have this woman come up to me after a gig and she was telling me some story or something and it was funny, and then she was like, she was a doctor and she's like, and I don't usually like female comedians, but I thought you were really good. And I was like, I was gonna be like, do people come up to me and go, I don't usually like female doctors, but you're really good? Like, it's an insane thing to say to someone. I don't usually like male podcast hosters, but I think you're doing a really good job, sweetie. Like, it's so condescending,
It's a strange thing. I used to work in radio for a long time, and you'd often get people say, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I don't listen." And you're like, well, I don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
I don't care. I don't care if you don't listen. It's not like they work for Coke and I go, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I drink Pepsi," which I do. But the other thing is about comedians in general, or comics, whichever we're going to use, is that I've witnessed. I used to have a friend, and I guess we're still friends, but I haven't seen him for 20 years. It's one of those. In our 20s, we were mates, and we went on different paths. He went to Europe and became rich and famous. He was an opera singer, and I can still remember going to a rugby game actually, and being sitting next to him. We were in the terraces. We were quite close to the ground, so maybe only 10, 15 rows back. And Mike King was like hosting a halftime thing. And my mate was screaming out, you're useless. Oh, what a terrible, fuck off. And I was sitting there just going, would Mike King come to one of your opera performances and stand up in the 7th row and start? Because it's the same. He's at work right now. And you're watching him at work. It was quite a surreal moment. And I mean, like, I'm not even someone who, like, I worked at ZB for a long time, and that's the place, the one radio station in New Zealand that you probably get more complaints and more interactions with people than anywhere else. It's a good job, an opinion,
totally.
And so I don't particularly care about it, but watching other people do it, when I say I don't care, like I don't care about people doing it towards me who have in the past, but watching someone else do it, you're like, this doesn't make any logical sense.
Yeah, it's kind of, and it's just so, I don't know, I guess because comedy is kind of like that too. It's a job of opinion, like, and so people will tell you while you're on stage if they like your opinion or not, and sometimes they just tell you by not laughing. or sometimes they yell shit out at you.
But that's the appropriate way to tell you. The appropriate way to tell you is to not laugh. I mean, I'm sure you see them. I don't know. You're in the industry. I don't know whether this makes you cringe or you love them. But I love seeing when a particular person in the crowd will stand up at a comic and saying, "You're offending me," and you're like, this is what they do. And the other 149 people in the room aren't being offended, but the show is now stopped because you're offended by something that was said that was a joke. I love something Dave Chappelle said a wee while ago, whether people agree or disagree with his thoughts. He was talking about being trolled on Twitter. That's in his latest special. And he goes, but I don't give a fuck because Twitter's not a real place. And I'm like, what a beautiful thing to say, because it's so true that just because you've got one of these that has access to the internet and the world technically can see your message, it doesn't mean your message is worthy of the world seeing. But people don't seem to understand that.
Yeah, I think everyone, it's so easy to express your opinion online, I think everyone thinks that because everyone kind of has a platform now, so everyone thinks their opinion is important all the time, and some people's opinions aren't worth shit. But a lot of time it's like the loudest ones, like anti-vaxxers and stuff. They're so loud, but like 90% of our country is vaccinated, so obviously they're not the majority. And I think like it depends on what it is, because I've seen my favorite though is if someone is saying something really fucked up and someone stands up and yells at them. I'm like, this is really funny, because it's often happens to newer comics who don't know how to I think it happens a lot with male comics will start when they start, and their favorites are like Chappelle or Anthony Jeselnik or whatever, and like people who do take on delicate or touchy subjects, and like even Chappelle's stuff hasn't been received that warmly recently, but he's one of the best of all time, and like people start comedy and they think they're at that level on their first gig. They'll talk about something pretty touchy, and they're trying to be ironic, but they don't know they don't have the skill set or the self-awareness to do it properly, and they will eat shit so hard. And majority of the time, the audience is just sitting there like, oh, and you're just like, this is like, you're watching someone learn a very tough lesson in front of a big crowd, and sometimes they never come back, and which could be for the best, and sometimes they figure it out and know how to do that properly, which is also good. But there was one guy who was I was like hosting a Raw night, which is like newbies, and he was really nice backstage, and I wasn't really listening, but I got on sorry, he was on stage, and I heard him going like just a chorus of women going no, and and he was like, he said something, and this woman just goes, racism and sexism are not funny, like stands up, and he goes, ma'am, I was being facetious. Statistically, this half of the room are wife beaters. And everyone was like, this woman was like, no. And he was like, okay, thanks, it's been my time, and got off stage. And I was like, this is the funniest thing I've ever seen. But I was like, also now I have to fix it. And it was fine, but I was like, Jesus, watching someone learn that lesson is pretty funny. But I think, majority of the time, if people are offended, they'll leave, or they'll just sit there not laughing, which is definitely like, people know. But then sometimes people laugh because the person has said something so shocking that's their like response, rather than it being funny. And then the guys with no self-awareness will come off stage and go, oh, like, killed it. And I'm like, if my jokes got the response your jokes just got, I would quit comedy. Like, I would be like, oh, that was the roughest gig of my life. And some people were like, yeah, got it. Like, no, you didn't. Like, the only person you got was yourself by saying that.
Some comedians, but this again, it's probably what you're saying about the newbies come on board and think they're the shit. Like Jeselnik is someone who goes out almost to offend. It's almost kind of part of what he wants to do. But then you look at it, and I'm sure people who know comedy, and if you don't, just look it up. I think it's called I think it's Bill Burr Boston, where he spends 13 minutes abusing the audience at the right time, at the right moment. Like when you were talking about, you just gave the example about how the person stood up and said, sexism and racism is never funny. I'm like, I don't agree with that statement, personally, because it depends how, why, and when. He
was doing it in a context.
Yeah, let's say you're someone was in a church meeting and it was a lovely Christian audience or something, then perhaps, mind you, there might be some clan messages that would be quite appropriate there, but there may not be an appropriate time for every effing and blinding and that thing, but other places there were, and so if people haven't, I'll try and link it on the Facebook page, but if people haven't seen it, basically I've heard Bill Burr tell the story of what happened on that night. In fact, I heard Bob Saget, recently departed Bob Saget, talk about being backstage when Bill Burr was doing that on stage. And Bill Burr came off stage and thought he had ruined his career. And Bob Saget was saying, he was telling Bill it was the best thing he had ever heard, because it was the right time and the right reason and the right moment to tell this audience that they were a bunch of douchebags for these reasons. And it was hilarious. And if you listen to it at the start of, I think it's about 13 minutes, at the start of it, he's getting lots of boos. And even though the end of it, he's even harsher towards them, he's basically flipped the whole audience and they're all laughing because they're coming along now and they think it's hilarious. So,
and that's the thing is like, sometimes the audience does just suck shit. There's nothing you can do, or you can go like Bill Burr and just go nuts at them. I need to listen to that clip. That's one of my favorite ones. And he keeps just yelling, keeps going like, 8 minutes. Like, I've got 15 minutes. I'm going to tell you what I think. It's so funny. And I think everyone was like bombing that night, and it was like a crazy lineup, like really great comedians, and everyone was having a hard time because it was just this really rowdy Boston audience who was just like drunk as shit and didn't care. And sometimes you can power through that. I mean, not in a Boston stadium, but sometimes you can power through drunk people kind of chit-chatting. But when it's like that level, you just got to start putting people in their place. And I think the audience had basically treated the comics prior to Bill like they were horse shit. And Bill was like, this is a moment where actually these guys don't suck. Like Patrice O'Neill was there, and people who know comedy, Patrice O'Neill is like legend. He's like one of the original OGs in his style of comedy. He was there, and he apparently got on and got off. And he was like, I'm not doing this crowd. And so Bill was just like, enough is enough. So it's such an iconic set. It comes up a lot when we're talking about people bombing, because I wouldn't consider that a bomb. Like he just goes handies on it. It's so funny. It's a great set.
Here's something else that's interesting, because the conversation we were having before about the noise on Twitter and that kind of stuff, and the people making the noise, and you said that the Dave Chappelle's not being received that warmly at the moment. But I think that the audience, I just had a look while we were talking at Rotten Tomatoes, not that it's the be all and end all, and I think that the audience, like this is the closer, this is the latest, the audience score is 95%. And I wonder, and I know this can be, it can be a whole bunch of people skewing the numbers and stuff, but I do wonder sometimes about, on one hand, I've got like 7 things in a row that we've talked about that I want to reference back to. When we listen to the extremities, like you were talking about the anti-vaxxers, the extremities make a lot of noise, but it's not often representative of what's going on. And an example of that is the anti-vaxxers. Like I messaged Family First today because they put something else about dividing the country, and I just simply said, where 90% of people think one thing and 5% think another, that's not division, that's consensus with some outliers. So but that group is making a lot of noise. I also thought it was hilarious. I'm probably going to tweet it out later today that, Family First will have will do research, and they'll go like 55% of New Zealand wants to be able to smack their kids. That's a majority government. Why aren't you listening to the majority? Yet in this case, 10% are disagreeing, and they're going like, why 10%? It's like, you can't have it both ways. So I think a big part of this conversation is also drilling down into what is the truth. Like with Chappelle, and I'm not giving an answer here necessarily. Is he off the mark in his comedy stance? Is he wrong? And has it not been well received? Or is that just those loud voices from the edges who are saying that? And actually, the fans who are just kind of sitting in the middle, just taking in the content, love it. I mean, the numbers would say that the fans love it, unless they're skewed. But I don't know. I think it's interesting. It's I'm not involved in comedy, but I mean, you can probably hear I'm a pretty big student of it. You know, I keep an eye on it, I watch it, I love to consume it. I think it's a really interesting time because there are, you know, and we've already talked about, you know, people being offended in the audience. There are comedians who are doing things like, you know, they won't perform at certain places, or they do certain skits, and there are other comedians who are like, nothing's off. You know, I can talk about anything I want. Don't care what you say. I'm telling jokes, and I can talk about whatever I want. And it'll be interesting to see at the end of this transition which one of those two positions wins out, if either. Maybe they'll both still be there.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there's definitely always comics who are willing to do whatever. I think the thing is, you can talk about whatever you want on stage, you can say whatever you want, but you have to be prepared to deal with the backlash of whatever fucked up shit you're talking about. Like, and I think so. I think if you want to, I don't know, you have to be. If you're going to say something, you have to be prepared to back it up or apologize, depending on what you said and how much you believe in it. But you're the one who's going to say it, so you're going to have to deal with the it's a free speech thing. People are like, you can't say anything these days. It's like, no, you can still say stuff, but there's just more consequences. So that's what I think. I think you can say anything you like, but you're going to be the one to deal with it if it goes pear-shaped, you know? So I think, I mean, I haven't watched Chappelle's special because I just think it was going to make me mad. I think that, like, trans people are one of the most, like, marginalized groups of people and have, like, really bad suicide rates, really bad, like, trans Black women have the highest murder rate of any group. And I just think, what's the point of shitting on them for an hour? Like, how does that make, like, how does that make you, like, how does that make your life better? You know, like, I think I was gonna watch it, and then I heard from a few people it's just not like, there's not many jokes in it too, which I think that's the most offensive thing to me. Like, if you're gonna talk shit, you better make it fucking funny. Like, you can't just talk. If you're gonna get paid however many millions for a Netflix special, comedy special, make it, and it's going to be really, like, harmful to a particular group of people, make it really funny. Like, I just think, and that's why I think the audience ratings is, like, it's the same as people tanking, like, Amy Schumer's like, stuff on movies or whatever.
The Black special on Netflix, that's what they did it with that.
Same thing as people tanking that before it's even come out or whatever. And I think people supporting Chappelle because they're like, he's, like, speaking his truth or whatever. Like, they haven't watched it yet or whatever. They might not have even watched it, but I think people love to support people who are doing harmful stuff, like, Donald Trump and stuff. Like, I think it's, I don't know. I probably should watch the special, but
I think you should. I think you certainly should, because I've watched it. I mean, I'm not part of the LGBTI community, so I can't speak to it from being on the inside out. I think, as is usually the case, whatever perspective someone has, normally the Twitter artsy and the bloggers, most comedy sets don't transpose well into the written word. Without the sideways look and the wink of the eye, or the whatever. It doesn't. I'm not saying that Dave should. Dave, like, I know him, Mr. Chappelle should. But I do also think, obviously the stats that you're talking about to do with the trans community are very real, completely, 100%. But what I don't quite see is Ricky Gervais making a joke about Caitlyn Jenner being a bad driver actually adds to that. So I actually thought that was a genius joke, because the reason that was a genius joke was he was actually saying he was actually being sexist towards women and including Caitlyn Jenner in that group. Right. He was basically saying, you're a woman and you've just killed somebody in a car. That's not so good for women driving stats. But people again took offense because it was. I just don't think there's these protected groups. Well, I don't think there should be these protected groups, because I've said this for a long time. And for people who've listened to my podcast, I'm sorry if I'm about to repeat myself, but if you give me the rules, I'm actually okay to live by the rules. If you give me the rules, I mean, within reason, unless they're ridiculous or against any kind of freedoms we have. But give me the rules. I'm a nice person. I don't want to hurt someone's feelings. I don't want to make someone feel bad. But at the moment we're going through this time where, for example, you know, the representation one in films and having Lin-Manuel Miranda having to apologize for In the Heights, etc., etc., etc.
Yeah.
I'm like, if that's the path we're going to go, right?
Yeah.
So only trans people can tell trans jokes. If that's the rules, that's fine. That means women stop telling jokes about men, lesbians stop telling jokes about straight men. You know, white people stop telling jokes about Mexicans. Mexicans stop telling jokes about white people. You know, it's like you what we can't do is have a sector of society that says leave them alone, but everyone else is free range. We either do that for everyone or we do it for no one. And I think you've said freedom of speech. We don't really have freedom of speech in New Zealand like the Americans claim, but that's sort of what it is to me. It's an freedom of speech with strings attached is not freedom of speech.
Yeah.
And I'm okay. I'm okay going down that path if that's what society decides. What I struggle with is I don't even want to talk about what group it is, because there is good reasons for some groups to identify themselves as being more at risk. But to try and pull a group out and say, this is the untouchables, but everything else, that feels strange to me. And I don't know how that would work.
Yeah. Well, I think it's just the concept, you know, like punching up and punching down.
Yeah, totally.
In comedy. Yeah. So like there's a difference between I guess like you said, Mexican people making fun of white people, like a group who's been oppressed by another group making fun of the oppressors. There's a difference between that when it's like, and then, you know, a like multi-millionaire making fun of, like, making jokes, because I think there's like studies and stuff that have shown that like that kind of like, even though it's not like kill trans people, like it can still lead to violence and like negative views and stuff on trans people, which can become harmful in the real world. So it's a difference between this very, very rich and famous man telling his views on Netflix rather than like one person on their personal Twitter being like, Dave Chappelle hurt me. Like, you know, it's just there's a big power imbalance. It's when the power is way off, that's the thing that like, and I think some people think having consequences is the same as like getting the shit beaten out of you because you're trans. Like some people think people telling you did a bad joke and you should say sorry is the same as like like physical real world consequences happening to you rather than people telling you you're a dickhead. Like I think that's the thing, is people who've never kind of faced pushback before are like outrage and really playing the victim hard out. You know, like
I don't want to spend the day talking about Dave Chappelle and defending Dave Chappelle. No. But many could argue he has been that person. When he grew up as a, you know, as a black kid having to carry his books to school, and so he's a minority as well. And then you kind of go, if he's a minority but he's a millionaire, does that? So I actually read an article that talked about Dave Chappelle's white privilege, and because basically once you get wealthy, your blackness disappears. I'm like, well, hang on. If we are told constantly about my lived experience. His lived experience has been basically a take. I mean, I'm saying again, I'm not sitting here to defend Dave Chappelle, but but I ingest this stuff on a daily. I love it. You know, this is what I'm into. You know, he was, if you read the books, if you read his interviews, if you see what was done to him when he got into the industry, he was taken advantage of. He's faced all those things as well, but now because he's gone to Netflix and made 60 million for his first 3, all of a sudden all of that means nothing, and he's a wealthy down puncher. You know, I mean, I'm not the subject of any of those jokes, so it's hard. I'm not trying to, but because this is what I do, I talk about things that are going on in the world. I talk with people like yourself who are better informed than me. I'm like, as a fucking moron sitting at the bottom of the world, I'm like, I don't get it. Like I don't. Here's one, and we weren't going to talk about this, but because we brought him up, I went and grabbed it. Here's one here. I'm sure everyone's heard about Patton Oswalt.
I saw this.
Taking a photo with Dave Chappelle, wrote a lovely comment on it about his friend of 25 years, and then Patton Oswalt got jumped on for being a transphobe because he took a photo with a transphobe, and he apologized to the community for actually then taking a photo with his friend of 25 years and
Yeah.
posting it. That to me, and again, I can't, I'm not going to speak to the idea of I understand, but that to me seems ludicrous. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not like he was saying, here's my friend Dave Chappelle, fuck you, trans community. He was like,
Yeah.
here's my friend of 25 years, Dave Chappelle, period. That's the end of my sentence.
No, yeah.
So I don't get it. I don't get any of that. I know
Yeah.
maybe because I'm I guess I'm not a boomer. I'm Generation X, but perhaps we're not far away from being okay boomer to okay Gen X. Maybe that's gonna be the next thing. But yeah, I've said this for a long time on this podcast. I really don't feel like in this conversation we yet have the language in society to have this conversation properly. Like I don't feel like we know exactly enough about all of the subject matter to push through for the subject matter. And until language and words are, I mean, you're a comedian, you're a wordsmith, right? But they are decided by society. You know, no one said the word gay after the 1940s was only now going to be used for the someone in the LGBT community. That was what the community decided, started to use. It naturally moved and morphed, and now no one thinks the word gay means happy, right? It means something else. But that wasn't an edict that came down from on high telling to society to change all their words. Now we're getting, edicts might be too harsh word, but we're getting direction as to what words to use for what. And it's not how language grows and evolves. You know, language grows and evolves from us in the community starting to use and implement. And I think that's why we don't have the language yet, because on one hand, and I'm not even talking any specific word, but we're being told that this is acceptable and this is not, but the community hasn't taken that on board yet and hasn't actually, it's not coming from the community, meaning all of society in that direction. It's like we've decided as a community that, you know, the F word for the gay community is inappropriate. We've decided that. We haven't been told today this is inappropriate. We've decided that. Yes, there are still some losers out there using it, but most of us in society agree that that's not inappropriate. As is the N word. Yes, some revolting people still use it, but as a group, we've decided. And because we haven't as a group decided amongst some of these other things, it's like we're having two conversations going past each other at the moment. And I don't know how we're going to finish that conversation.
Yeah. Well, I think it's just that thing of enough people within those minority communities say that it's not cool to use this word anymore, like because it's been used against us for years and years, and you know, while we were being beaten to death or whatever, that's a pretty big thing. But and then it's taken the rest of society who isn't impacted by this to listen to that group. So I think that's it's coming still from within the small communities, but it just takes a while for the rest of society to catch up.
But I agree with that. But at the moment, it's not that we're being said that this word is really causing harm. It's like these 72 different words are now what must be used for everything. And if you get it wrong, I'm going to send a Twitter message to your employer to have you fired, followed by, you know, my 1,000 followers, which would then be followed by their 1,000 followers. And if you don't use my correct one of 72 words, then you're a bigot. Like I don't even see how that's literally physically possible for society to do.
I think there's definitely people still view things in very black and white when it's very complex, but I also think I think it's best to be more sensitive to people, because like I'd rather not hurt people's feelings or like make people feel shit. So I definitely tend to err on the side of caution. And some people do, like some people just are ignorant of that topic. They just don't know, or they're not like chronically online like we are. So they're seeing all this stuff and they just don't know yet. And they want to learn, and then some people go too hard. But these people who go too like, you've said this and you can't do that, like they're probably coming from a place of like they're fucking fed up, you know, like they've been dealing with this shit their whole lives, they've been treated like shit, and it's still, you know, really hard. I think it's a complex conversation, and I think it's important to have these conversations like civilly, like we're doing, you know. But
no, I think you're right. I think you're right.
I also
it is complex,
I fully understand.
I think that more needs to happen.
But I also think like there's some shit where like I've had that conversation with people civilly a few times, and the next time, and I've heard the same bullshit arguments a few times, and by the time it gets to the next time, I can't be fucked, and I'm true. Like, I can't be bothered because you're being a dumb cunt. Like, I can't be bothered with you. Like, that's not you, but you know, like that's the.
No.
I
Me
definitely
too.
see how some people go hunt. Yeah, some people. Yeah, it's hard when it's delicate topics and not everyone has good communication skills or the brain power to understand why it's delicate. Yeah, I don't know.
No, look, I think you're right. And I think that I remember when I was working at ZB in the first part of this century, there were still conversations going on around global warming, climate change.
Mhm.
And I remember as a host, I used to want to have these conversations because my listeners were having these conversations. And so I used to contact people like Greenpeace, and they'd say to me, very black and white, I'm sorry, the science is settled. We're not going to be involved in a conversation where the opposing view goes out.
Yeah,
Black and white,
yeah,
cut black. And I would say to
yeah,
them in a really gentle way, I would say, you know, you're really lucky because you've had the last several years with these conversations going on to form your opinion, to get to your
yeah,
place. What you're doing by not engaging is you're stopping people like me and a whole group of my listeners from actually hearing those
yeah,
conversations as well and being able to move forward. And I have a little bit of a fear at the moment that I have another product called Elephant TV, which is a debate series. And one of the things I'm trying to do is have these conversations because I'm a little bit concerned at the moment that we're starting to get, I'm not going to engage in that conversation. And whilst I agree for an individual's safety, own mental health, you know, their own, I guess, oneness being, you know, what they need for them, it's fine not to want to engage. I think those conversations still on some level need to have engagement because
yeah,
there is this particular conversation that we're talking about is actually a massive conversation around water coolers at the moment and community at the moment. And if a part of that conversation just drops out, then the rest of the community doesn't have the opportunity to be educated. And I think that's really dangerous.
yeah. I mean, the thing is it's just exhausting to have the same conversations over and over with people who aren't arguing in good faith and aren't
That's
arguing with
true.
like the best interests of, like, for example, the trans community or whatever at heart, and like, or people who are arguing on behalf of like oil companies against global warming's a myth. Like, it's because you're not arguing with people who actually care about that topic. They care about winning. And it's so fucking tiring to argue with someone who isn't going to take you on board, doesn't give a shit, and like it just wants to win the argument and make you look like a fool.
Yeah.
So I definitely understand. And also, there is so much research out there. People are like, I guess the thing is though, people don't have good online media literacy. And like, you know, I went to uni and have a degree in communications, and one of our classes was about like, if this website ends in, you know, dot whatever, it's probably some scam bullshit blog, you know, like that's not actually coming from facts or scientists, it's coming from a lunatic. So it's like, yeah, it's especially older people, I think, have a hard time telling the difference between, and the thing with fake news, and they don't trust real,
Yeah.
like, or whatever. It's everything's a nightmare.
And Facebook looks real. I mean, have you heard the stat? I can pull up the story if you want to see it, that 2/3 of all the misinformation at the moment on Facebook has come from 12 people.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I should bring it up in case others haven't ever heard that. So 2/3, there's 12 people. They have a name for them. Let me look this up. 12 people, and I'll put COVID. I'll just put COVID. That'll probably find it. 12 people, COVID.
Yeah.
There we go. The very first story from The Guardian, so it can be fairly trusted. Shall I bring it up? It's my choice. Yes, I'm happy. Majority of COVID misinformation came from 12 people, report finds. The vast majority of COVID anti-vaccine misinformation and conspiracy theories originated from just 12 people, a report by the Center of Countering Digital Hate cited by the White House this week found. So yeah, that's the information that can go, you know, a million miles an hour and go round and round and round and round. And look, I think I agree with you. And I guess where I'm standing is I sit here and I go, for the conversation that kind of has sprung out of this, to do with, let's say, the trans community, which is what we're talking about, but this could be over many things. I kind of think where science is not yet in agreement, how can we in society? And I go like, the social sciences, psychology and various things are saying one thing about that conversation, and biology and physiology are saying something different. And I'm like, that's what I'm saying. We don't really have the words. And I feel like let's the academics and the community get to consensus, and then we'll be able to have the conversation in society. I mean, I'm not trying to farm it off, so it doesn't matter. It does matter, but I'm like, how can one be expected to have a conversation about what this all means when the people at the pointy end of the data, not the pointy end of the lifestyle necessarily, are still in I mean, we're not in disagreement about the shape of the earth or gravity or climate change, those sorts of things, but there seems to still be, even within academia, not a consensus on this conversation. And that's where I kind of step back and go, like I was going to say, I can give you a little trick for those tiring conversations. I'll give you a trick. This is what I say to people. I say, are you prepared to change your position in this conversation? So because if you give me new information, I'm prepared to change my position, whatever the conversation is. I say, are you prepared to change your position? And if they say no, I go, thanks, but I'm not looking for an argument.
Yeah, cool.
And if they say, yeah, I'd like to know, I go, okay, well, let's have a talk about it. So I use that, once, or I was gonna say once or twice a week. That's probably an exaggeration. A couple of times a month. I go to people, are you prepared? Are you actually, if I give you information, are you prepared to change your position? And if they say no, I go, it's nice to have a chat.
Yeah.
Because there's no point.
It's a good idea. Yeah, because I think I might I don't know, some people say they want to learn and really they don't, but I don't know. I think for me, the science and stuff can still take a while to catch up. I don't know, like, and like the law and stuff, like being gay was like was illegal until like the 70s in New Zealand, and also
87, I think it was.
80s? Jesus
87,
Christ. I don't remember, I wasn't born, but the it was like a mental disorder for a long time too. So like even that could be wrong. And so I think for me what's important is to listen to trans people and people from the communities and what they're saying, and take what they're saying on board, because I'm not trans or gender diverse or anything. So I don't even if I don't understand it, I just think like I think I just always try and put myself in other shoes and think of a situation that I was in it, and I can relate to the experience. Like, and for me, my only time experiencing gender dysphoria was when I was like a teenager, and I was in Sterling Sports, and I needed a pair of skins, those like legging compression tights for soccer.
Yeah.
And there was some boys ones on sale, and they had like a penis pocket in them. And my mum loves a bargain, so she's like, just get these ones. And I just felt this intense, like I was upset and angry, and I was like, I don't have a fucking penis. I don't want these boys ones. I'm not a boy. I don't want them. I'm not going to wear them. I'm not a boy. Don't put me in boys' clothes. I'm not a boy. I don't want these fucking stupid boy pants. Like, and it really upset me. And anytime, like, and I just think about how trans people must felt growing up facing that every single day. And like, and this was just one time, and it was because my mum was being stingy, and I got the girl ones through such a tantrum that I got what I wanted. Yeah. But like, and as a, a cisgender person, that's probably the only time I'll experience gender dysphoria like that. But I was so upset, like viscerally, like I felt it in my bones, that I was like, I don't want these stupid penis pocket tights. Like it just made me feel so weird and off, and I was like, I hate this. And that just created such a strong reaction in me that, and I think a lot of the people who are like, fuck trans people, blah blah, a lot of the men who are like that, if you put them in a fucking dress and told them they had to wear a dress every day of their lives, they'd be pretty fucking upset about it, and they wouldn't cope. And they would feel like feminized and weird, and like that's not how they are. So that's what I think. Like, I just think that's how I feel about trans people, is if I felt like that from one piece of clothing I wore in a changing room for 15 minutes, and I'm going to say 2010, and I still remember feeling that strongly about it, that's how they must feel every day of their lives when they had to live for years and years and years. Some people don't. Some people transition early on, which is great. Some people don't transition until they're like 50s, 60s. Like, and that must be really, really so damaging to your psyche to pretend to be someone you're not, or be forced to dress a certain way, you know, for years and years and years. Like, it's just awful. So that's what I think when people are making fun of, just shitting on trans people for no reason, because it's an easy laugh or it's an easy get. Like, that's just being a dickhead. I don't know. Yeah, I
think your experience, you must look at that experience now, and whilst it was shitty at the moment, that's given you an insight that is invaluable. That's what an amazing, I mean, not in the moment, but on reflection, what an amazing opportunity to be able to speak. Like someone, I mean, it's completely off track here, but someone talked to me the other day about anxiety. Don't suffer from anxiety, don't understand what it means really. But they were like, you know, when you go on stage, and I'm like, yep.
Yeah.
And they're like, you know, the nerves, the butterflies, the nerves you feel before you go on stage. And straight away I was taken to, I once emceed a concert in front of 30,000 people. So, you know, that's a big audience to be standing up in front of and talking to. And although I was working for a radio station, so typically it was an audience who most of them sort of loved the station. So it was a safe space. It was a safe space. I thought back about that and I was like, shit, I can now quantify what this person says when they're talking about anxiety. And I thought about the adrenaline and the butterfly. If I had that 24/7, that would be debilitating. So putting the context on it really helped me, and you putting that context on for you, that's an amazing experience in in hindsight, I reckon.
Well, I'm lucky that my mum was stingy, because now I have empathy. So, but I think for anxiety, I have that. That's my job. Like, every day, every time I do a gig, I get the shits, because I'm just like, oh, and every time before I'm about to go on stage, I'm like, I hate comedy. I've never said anything funny. This sucks. And then I'm on stage and I'm just like, attention.
Yeah. Is it your happy space? You're like, being on stage, is that your happy place?
Yeah.
Like, once you're there?
Sometimes no, depending on how it's going. But majority of the time, I just love it so much. And I think for me, like, the lockdown really cemented how much, like, stand up is my purpose, and how it's my everything. And like, I didn't realize how much I missed it until we were like months into lockdown, and we were doing this gig, this like audition for something, and I was devastated that we didn't get to like do it in person, because usually it's so much fun. You get to hang out with everyone and people you hadn't met before, and like, it's like networking, but it's just hanging out. Like, comedy networking is just having fun, and chatting to people, and I'm such a people person. And I was just like, I called one of my friends who doesn't do comedy, cried to her. One of my friends who is a comedian cried to him. Like, I just was so sad that this was what it had come to. And I think, but then of course, as soon as we're out of lockdown, I'm like, oh, I can't be fucked with this gig. I don't want to do this. But but then as soon as I'm on stage, I'm so happy. And as soon as it's done, I'm so relaxed. But it's like, I did a bungee jump for my birthday this year, and my mum paid for it. And I was like, yeah, this will be fun. I'm a bit nervous. It'll be great though. Got to the edge of the bridge, got like the vertigo, like zoom in, pan out at the same time, and just like was like, oh my God, this is the most scared I've ever been in my life. This is not fun. I don't want to do this. I just can't jump off this bridge. I'm not doing it. And then I look over at my mum and I'm like, if I don't jump, she can't get a refund. I'm never going to hear the fucking end of it. I'd rather die on the way down than deal with
peer
that.
pressure. Yes, peer pressure.
Yeah, it was awful. And I got to the bottom, you're just like hanging upside down, and I was just like, this sucks. And I'd always wanted to do it my whole life, and I did it, and I was like, I hate this. And the people at the bottom who like unhook you and put you in the little boat, it was in Queenstown, they're like, oh, did you have fun? I was like, no, that sucked. I'm never doing it again. And I'm never that rude. Like, in a restaurant, if I don't like the food, I'm like, oh yeah, it was great. Like, I'll never say anything because I feel bad that I haven't liked something someone's put some hard work into for me. But I was like, that sucked. I hate it. I'm never ever doing it again. And I just felt, I had like, but it's like, that's what stand-up is like. And now I don't get, there's been times where I've almost blacked out from nerves. Like, I've blacked out for like a second because I'm freaking out so bad. and I just want it to go so well. But that only happens in like an important gig, or if there's someone I want to impress. Like if there's good comedians, I want them to think I'm a good comedian. So I'm like, this better go well. But yeah, I just had this big adrenaline dump and I felt shaky for days. But also, as soon as I got back up to the top and I saw it was like $50 to go again, I was like, it's a steal. It's just, and my mom's like, no, you're not. You just made such a big deal about it. You're not doing it again. I was like, fine.
So the second jump was like a quarter of the price because you'd just done one. That what you're saying?
Yeah.
Ah.
So I was like, and that's how they get you, because I was like, shit, and I was like, I kind of want to do it again. Like, even though I was like, I hate this. I was like shaky the whole rest of the day. I was so stressed. Like, I was like, shit, maybe I'll do it again. And that's kind of what stand-up's like. Is like you feel like shit, and afterwards you're just relieved it's over, and then you're like, oh, maybe I'll do it again. Like, and that's kind of how you start it. I think the first gig's always the worst. The first gig is like so scary because you don't know what to expect. But when you know what to expect, you're like, oh, this will be fine. And even if you're bombing for 10 minutes because the crowd hates you, you're like, whatever. You're like,
there's that adage of, it's like the naughty kid. One of the reasons the naughty kid, quote unquote naughty, the kid that acts out, is any attention is better than no attention at all. So a bad bomb is better than sitting in the audience and thinking, I wish I was up there.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And if a gig's going well and I'm there to like watch a friend or something, then I'm just like, fuck, I wish I was doing this. Like, I'm always on the day, like tonight, I don't have a gig tonight, and I'm like, oh, thank God I don't have a gig. And like sometimes if I don't, I'll go and hang out for like at the Classic or whatever. And then if I'm not on, as soon as I get to the gig and if it's a good gig, I'm like, fuck, I wish I had a spot. I wish I was up there. But if it's going badly, I'm like, shame. Like, I'm so happy to not have to do it.
I was gonna say as well, people who are watching, not listening, looks like it looks like we're in the same room. If you have a look at where my white wall starts here, and then goes through into your white wall, I'm almost expecting my finger to come out the other side, but it's not.
Wrong side.
Wrong side. The white wall going into the. It looks like we're just set up.
I'm doing a terrible job of this. I was trying to wait. How am I? I'm reversed.
You're trying to ET it. Oh, yeah, there you go. So
I've got nails.
Oh, there you go. Perfect. I wanted to ask you, and I know this is a gig that you've already finished, but I read a post the other day by one of the guys who works with the Chills down here in Dunedin, and it was a long post on his Facebook page talking about, hey, Prime Minister, we fronted this campaign, we being the art industry, fronted this campaign to help people go out and get vaccinated so they could enjoy summer. We gave up our time and we gave up our music and we did this and we helped you get them. And now that, that there's this other variant here, we're the ones that seem to be getting shut down as well. This was a gig that a bunch of comedians are doing a lot at the moment, the Great Kiwi Summer Comedy Roadshow. And I talked to Jeremy Elwood the other day, and he said it's not really a tour. It's like people are going out and doing gigs, then going out and doing gigs, and going out and doing gigs. But has that all stopped because of the traffic light? Red, whatever we are? Red?
I think there's one gig that's going ahead in near Wellington, but they've had to like do 3 separate tents or something. Like, they're being really safe about it because there's like a few hundred people. And I think they've managed to set it up that the different groups of 100 won't interact. But they've been working with the Ministry of MBIE. I'm not sure, Ministry of Business, Innovation, Education, I'm guessing. I don't know.
I think the E is enterprise.
Enterprise, that's what I said. Yep. And then and I think also the COVID or the Ministry of Health or whatever, they're getting their information from, like, they're checking with government departments. And so we're lucky we squeaked these in orange because quite a few of them couldn't have gone ahead, or we wouldn't have got good pay for them and stuff. And doing gigs out of town, the pay has to be good because it's it's a bit of a hassle. Sure. But then so they've got one that's going ahead, but I think the rest of them aren't because they're in like Motueka, which is like near Nelson, and it's where they're having like a big Omicron outbreak and stuff. So I think they're straight up cancelling some of them. But comedy definitely struggles. Like, I know, do you know Brinley Stent, who won the Billy T last year?
No, I'm not sure of him.
She's a really great improver, and she was on Taskmaster. She's amazing. But she has just had to cancel her, like, she was doing a return of her Billy T winning show at the Basement next week, and that's been cancelled. And I know that in Red, Comedy Fest is in May, and in Red, I think the Basement goes from like 120 seats to 40 seats, which is like a third. You're not going to make any money, you know, especially like with all the stuff. I'm hopefully Fest can go ahead in orange or green by then. I'm not sure, but it's like I'm supposed to be doing Dunedin Fringe in March, and I'm just not sure if we'll be in green, because if it's red, it's kind of like, especially if you're in those smaller venues and it's just you who has to pay for your own flights, for your accommodation, for your poster, for photography for the poster, like all, you know, there's so much stuff that goes into comedy that people don't realize. And like it's the costs are huge, and if Fest gets cancelled or your gigs get cancelled, you've lost so much money. Like, it's just, for like, gigs can still go to the classic, but it's like, I think that's a 120 room and that's 60 at the moment, and everyone has to be spaced out, and it's like really some people don't want to perform because they don't feel safe performing in like bars and stuff. I will say every bar I've gone to has been really good with the vaccine passes and stuff, but like, and when we were on this tour, because it was regional, you know, sometimes I know people regionally have been a bit, you know, vaccine hesitant or said that they haven't cared about it, but all the bars were like, even like the RSAs and stuff were hard out checking vaccine passes, which was really good. But comedy's kind of fucked, like in Red. So I think it's an artist. I really want an artist benefit because I'm on the regular benefit at the moment. And being on the benefit fucking sucks. It's like no money. It's like 300. I think I'm like 390 a week, and that's benefit and accommodation supplement, and that's like, you know, I think it's like 18K a year or something. It's fuck all. It's hard to live like, you could survive on, but you could just stay in your house doing nothing. But it's like, and then I'm lucky that I get, you know, because I've started getting TV stuff, I definitely have times where where I'm doing okay and I can survive. But like, it's especially because I'm 6 years into my career, and it's like, this is my high school friends who are 6 years into their career. They're on big pay rises, you know, they're doing really on a big salary. They're doing great. And I'm like at a point in my career where I'm like, guess I'll go on the benefit. Like, because I was working at Flight Centre. So obviously immediately lost my job. I was off sick for a week with glandular fever, went back for a week and a half, couldn't get into a doctor. So even though I was feeling better, I still sounded terrible, and eventually got into the doctor. The doctor's like, take the rest of the week off, go back on Monday. I was like, fine. Come back on Monday, got made redundant by 11:30.
Wow.
And then they announced lockdown at 1 p.m. And I was like, fuck it, I'm going back to Christchurch. That was the very first one. And then I applied for lots of jobs. I couldn't get a job. And then I was like, maybe I guess I'll just do comedy full time, because I got some good opportunities that had come up kind of last minute that I couldn't, like, there was tough stuff I had to turn down when I was working full time at Flight Centre. Because that was a very demanding job. And then like being poor, but time rich is very good. But that's how people know you're taking your career seriously. But like, I wouldn't have had to go back on the benefit if we weren't. And I'm definitely very for Red. I don't know about another like lockdown, because Omicron seems so infectious. I don't know what the end point would be for us, but you know, like, I don't know if it would just be, I don't know if we could ever get back to zero. But I think Red is good for the community, bad for arts, which is a sacrifice we have to make. But like, it just sucks that in lockdown, like if I was on the benefit in lockdown, I wouldn't have got any. I got kicked off the benefit because the wage subsidy was high, and because I'm like I'm a small business, but there's no support for like beneficiaries who like just had to be at home, couldn't do anything, or couldn't work, people who were looking for work couldn't get a job because no one's hiring in lockdown. Like, it's just, there's this 2-tier beneficiary system, which fucking sucks. But like, they used to have an arts benefit, and that would be really good. I just wish they'd raise the benefit to what the wage subsidy was, which is just livable levels. It's not even the living wage. It was just, I know people who were getting wage subsidy who were complaining, and I'm like, if you're on the benefit, you'd be even on even less. Like you wouldn't be able to live, and people just have no. I think people just think beneficiaries are lazy, but sometimes you just lose your job and you just can't. It's really tough to get another one because of your circumstances, or the like hiring situation, I guess.
Yeah.
But I think arts is cooked at the moment. I think we definitely need support from the government, and the wage. I saw something originally the wage subsidy was going to continue and read, and it should, because anything over 100 people can't happen, which is like not a ton of gigs, but a lot of gigs are getting cancelled because a lot of bars are like cutting capacity and can't afford to pay an MC or whatever to host an open mic, and no one makes money off open mics. Don't make any money anyway. But I know that the classic, it's a really hard time for them, which is where a lot of people in comedy started their careers, and like wouldn't have regular gigs without it, regular paying gigs. And I think that we definitely need like wage subsidy or some sort of support, because now is a bad time to be a self-employed contractor in the arts.
Totally. I remember it was when Helen Clark was Prime Minister. That's when we had a artists benefit, because a lot of people I knew a lot of people at that stage who were trying to start bands, that kind of stuff, and that were in. And I was just wondering, the arts taking the hit at the moment, maybe more so than many. There are other businesses that are more restricted, but the arts seem to be cancelled. But then as I'm saying that, the story just pops up on my feed that there were something like 8,000 people at this festival, Soundsplash. And at that festival, there was, quote, a number of COVID-19 cases. So that, I don't know, not to say, so yay, we can close the arts down, but it's.
Well, I guess that's why we're. That's why we're in a red.
Yeah, and it's a bit different from being down the local dairy with 4 people. You don't typically get it. It's. I don't know. Yeah, I agree with you. I remember talking to some American commentators when this all started. It's funny you're talking about Dunedin Fringe. That was exactly when lockdown started 2 years ago, because I wasn't working with them, but I knew them and I'd spoken to them numerous times, and they pulled me in with like 3 or 4 days to go, saying, how do we live stream? And we were going to set some live streaming up for them, and it all kind of fell over. But it was like let's do a virtual Fringe festival and sell tickets and put it behind a paywall and still sort of do it. Didn't end up happening. But as you were saying, the Dunedin Fringe Festival just reminded me that was exactly when we went into lockdown in 2020. So it's the 2-year anniversary, I guess, coming up of that.
Yeah, and that's because I remember when it got cancelled, I was relieved, which is very selfish of me. But because I was supposed to do my 2019 Best Newcomer show, which I hadn't done. Yeah, I hadn't done it like since May, since the festival, and I was supposed to be doing it in March at Dunedin Fringe, and I just felt like I let go of that material, and I didn't want to do it, and I couldn't be bothered, because a lot of it was like about a breakup, and I was like, I don't care about this breakup anymore. I don't want to be back in that place. But that's the problem with writing jokes about ex-boyfriends, is you're stuck with that joke for a while. But it's really, I hope it can still go ahead. It'll be really sad if it isn't, and I feel really sad for the other artists and the people, because so much work goes into putting on a festival, and as artists, like a lot of work goes into preparing for it, but coordinating all those artists and everything, a lot of work goes into that. But I didn't do it last year because of financially, I wasn't in a position to book flights to Dunedin and have pay for accommodation and be eating out every night, so. And this year I'm lucky now that I have like a manager and stuff, so I get a bit of support with things like that, and it comes out of my show's budget, what it makes at the end. So I'm kind of better. But it's there is definitely I think it's good that we're in red. I definitely think the problem with having some 8,000 people, a few COVID cases, hopefully the vaccination, because they all have vaccination policies, hopefully that will slow the spread and stop it from being like a super spreader event. But I've had a friend who's had to cancel her wedding or postpone her wedding that was supposed to be next month, up north, and she's really upset about it. And still, there's been people who've been kind of mean to her about it, and it's not her fault. Like, she didn't invent COVID.
Mean to her. Why
like,
mean to her? What has she done wrong?
oh, just like, no, just but being like, oh, people have spent money on this, blah blah, and it's like, it's not your wedding, cunt. Fuck off. Like, I'm fired up about it because I'm a bridesmaid and I'm the bridesmaid in charge of getting fired up. I've designated myself. But yeah, like, it's been making sacrifices and everyone has to lose. And I think a lot of artists aren't they're upset about, it's devastating to cancel something you've worked so hard on, or your wedding and stuff. Like, a lot of artists are upset at missing. I think most people, though, are then pissed at the government for being like, yeah, 2 shots for summer, 2 shots for the festivals, like blah blah, and then cancelling, like using the arts as a way to, because there's a ton of young people who are probably like, I don't know what's in the vaccine, and then they're like, oh, but I'm going to get it so I can go to R&V and do MTMA and a Portaloo, but because I know what's in that. But I think people are just upset at being like, kind of like, you're on your own now. Yeah, like, sorry, like, thanks for helping us get everyone vaxxed, and like, which is amazing. But yeah, sorry, everything's cancelled and you can kind of get fucked. I think there's like some support, but some of it's only for events over 5,000 people.
Right.
Which is, yeah, like R&V or whatever. And like, for someone like me, I'm not doing events over 5,000 people, but I'm still, financially losing a lot. And it's tough, and it sucks too, because then, like, yeah, I was vaccinated since before lockdown, but I still, sucks the rule, stayed home. And like, I feel like, as well as a lot of Auckland, like, we've all sacrificed a lot, and we were, the wage subsidy was the only good thing for me about lockdown, so part of my credit cards. But it was like, yeah, we just need, individual artists need help, because there's like a ton of stuff that's going to have to get cancelled, not just big huge festivals where hopefully they have some side of insurance.
I think you're right. I was still going to say before that I was talking to an American commentator last year, and I was talking to them about, there was some hairdresser who opened up her store illegally, and of course Fox News was like, she's a patriot, she's a hero. And the difference was, when I was talking to this commentator, he was in support of her opening her store because he's a bit of a nutter, which is fun. But the thing that I realized is, in America, they were having which they're not now, but they were having the restrictions in 2020 like us, but they were having no government support. So in other words, if a business shut, they just shut. So it's like, I always feel that if the government is going to insist on a measure that causes restrictions, that causes lack of income, then they must replace that income. They must. And if they don't, they shouldn't be putting restrictions on. I'm a fan of traffic light red. I was a supporter of the lockdown. I have no problems with giving the government credit for, keeping us out of what the rest of the world has been through for a good long time. But I still say, if they're going to make decisions that impact the bottom line of individuals and businesses, then they must replace that money. Or we have and we've just seen with Tova O'Brien going through her restraint of trade thing, which is ridiculous, because having worked in the industry, everyone signs a restraint of trade, so it would never to me look like it was a big story. But there is something in legislation about having the right to earn as well. And I can't cite it exactly, but there is a part of the legislation about work that we have the right to earn, and shutting down businesses without reimbursing them for what your rules have caused them to lose. I wonder if there's a legal loophole there for some business. I don't know, but it seems to me that it feels to me, and I'm not a dyed in the wool Labour supporter or anything, but as I say, credit where credit's due for the first, especially the first 15, 16 months. Some more criticism fair enough around Delta, and maybe some more around Omicron, but I don't think that they're trying to turn us into a communist state, and I don't think they're trying to turn us into an authoritarian, hellhole. I think we'll probably either see one of two things happen, and that's Omicron scream through the country, because Australia's had the same restrictions as us, and they've been having 100,000 cases a day, which per capita is more than America.
That's crazy.
It'll scream through the country, and which means it'll be a massive problem for the healthcare system, but it'll be done quite quickly. Probably, unfortunately, incredibly sadly, more people dying, or it will take 3 months. Kind of get through slowly, methodically, which I think is what they've been trying to do to manage it. And whilst it's been frustrating, if we're still having these conversations in October, you'll probably see me out there on some of those marches saying it's time. So for me, someone who supported the cases so far, I go, you've got 3 or 4 months, Jacinda, and team around you, and at that stage we can't. I mean, it's not even for me. Actually, lockdown's been quite a successful time for me because I've had access to people who have been in lockdown and when MIQ, and I talked to Russell Howard when he came across because he was sitting in a hotel room for 14 days, and so it's actually been quite a good time for content creation. I'm sitting in my home right now in shorts and my hoodie working, but I still think that there is a bigger picture, and I don't want to say exactly 3 months, but I get the feeling that it'll be, as I say, ripping through, or let's say 3 to 5 months. If it's basically not, we're seeing America start to tail down now. If we're not seeing more of that tail down in that time, then I think the whole country will be in one voice that something different has to be done. Just my opinion.
But I reckon, I mean, I think as soon as people start getting really, really sick, they'll stop complaining about restrictions. As soon as their loved ones start getting them or their loved ones get really sick and start dying, hopefully they'll realize we have been so massively lucky to get to the point where we're at without. We lived all last year basically no restrictions. Just and there's been my friend was in the UK and she was in lockdown for 18 months. And now she's back here, and it's been, it's in Auckland, the rest of the country is so lucky that it was only Auckland in lockdown for 4 months, which was awful. My mental health was I used to go for 2-hour walks to Western Springs, and it got to a point where I couldn't be alone with myself for 2 hours. I couldn't be alone with my thoughts that long. So I had to stop doing that because I just couldn't think for that long. I couldn't cope with it. So it's and that was awful. But I think my mum's got Crohn's disease and is on immunosuppressants and works at the hospital. She's
wow.
She's not, but she's just she's very blasé about the whole thing. She's because I was should I come down for Christmas? I'm fully vaxxed. My parents are double vaxxed and boosted. My dad works at the airport, and they're in their 60s. My mum's just turned 60. She's very upset about it. But and if I would have gone through a million months of lockdown if it meant keeping my mum safe.
Sure.
So I don't the thing is, it's just, it feels like we're on the brink of something bad. And I would at least like some money for it from the government. But I don't know. I would prefer the restrictions than I have very mild asthma, but still asthma. So I'm not super keen to get, and I'm double vaxxed and boosted now. I'm not super keen to get it. But I just think the sacrifices are worth it if we can keep people healthy and not dying.
Well, look, I actually had another wake up call the other day, and it actually wasn't even about health. I think most people would agree with you. Well, most sensible people about being healthy and not dying. But I go to a meeting every Tuesday of kind of local businesses, and we sort of just catch up and we feed each other leads and that sort of thing. And in that meeting, for the first time, I realized a bunch of these people run stores and outlets in Dunedin. And if one of them got Omicron, then all the people in that store are going to be isolated for 14 days, and that store shuts down for 2 weeks. So it was the first time I kind of went, the other thing that we should be thinking of is actually, we're talking about wanting businesses to be able to open so people can make money. We talked about it today. The other thing we're doing is looking after those small businesses, trying to keep people in there. Because if you're a shop, if you're McDonald's in Kaiba Pass in Auckland, I don't think there is one in Kaiba Pass, but whatever, a Newmarket in Auckland, and you come in and you're infected, then everybody on that shift is now in isolation for 2 weeks. You know, if you're a small business that strings tennis rackets, you know, and there's only 3 of you in there, if one of you gets it, then that store's gone for 2 weeks. Now, in the grander scheme of things, it doesn't seem like a lot, but if we get an outbreak of 10,000 people having it, then actually the economy is going to grind to a halt, and it's going to almost be like a lockdown for so many places. Are going to be.
There is some. I know there is. There's like a bit of support if you have to go into isolation, because you have to test, because you've either tested positive or you have to wait for test results, because you're a close contact or you've got it. So there's a bit of support, but that's the thing, is like, if everyone, you can't make money if you're dead. Like, if everyone, it just doesn't. People are like, the economy, and it's like, the economy is people, and if all these people die, like in America, they've got this huge worker shortage at the moment, and they're like, no one wants to work. It's like, no one wants to work for shit pay that you've been paying for years and years, and also people are dead. A ton of people straight up died, so they can't come into work because they're dead.
800,000.
Like, like that's a lot of people. That's a lot of dead people. So it's like, and that's the thing, is I was thinking at the Guildies the other night, I was like, because it was only, they limited it down to, it's usually like a big party with everyone can come who's a comedian, and they limited it to 60 people, and we were, seated, separated at tables and stuff. But I was like, if there's an outbreak, like, that's every gig basically, because everyone works, like, you could be on a gig with like 10 different comedians, and then the next night you're on a gig with 10 more different comedians. And if you've got it there, and it's like, our comedy industry is it's small, relatively small. And so that's like, if people at the Guildies got it, then there would be like, no one could go into, there'd be no one to do 7 days, there'd be no one to do Have You Been Paying Attention, there'd be no one to do the classic, like, and especially at the classic would have to shut down as like a point of interest or whatever, place of interest, and like deep clean and whatever. But like, also because the work is there's only like probably less than 10 permanent staff there, so then they'd have to go, so the classic couldn't open at all. So then even the comedians who didn't get it would still not have work. So it's like, it's that's why I just feel like we're at the brink of something, like, not just at our industry but for any industry. But like, because New Zealand's a small country, if you take out a big chunk of like a particular workforce, that's most of the work, like that only could be like 10 people. But it's like, you're right, it's, stores are probably going to have to go into individual lockdowns, because if you're a close contact, you basically have to go into lockdown for 2 weeks. And with Omicron, anyone who's basically in the building at the same time as you is a close contact. So it's like, it's
so the revelation I had was, I mean, health is first and foremost, but actually more than health. Hey, Liv, I'm going to have to shoot off in a tick. I've got another podcast to get to. But before we do, I did want to ask you one thing, because you seem to be someone who, let me just share my screen. This one. You seem to be someone who, I'm not sure how you've done this, but you seem to be spanning the audiences of competing groups. So I've got you here in May of 21 on 7 days, and then July of 21 on TVNZ, and then August in 21 on 7 days, and then October 21 back on Paying Attention. Is the work for you at the moment, are you able to, I'm surprised that people are able to jump backwards and forwards from TVNZ to TV3, or is it just that they've decided the talent is the most important thing and we're going to stop playing? Because I've always said, I love it when I see, not that he's on anymore, there's someone who's on CBS interviewing someone from HBO. It's great. I think that's how all media should be. Has there been a conscious decision as far as that they're just going, we want the talent, couldn't give a crap what else they've done, we want them for tonight? How does that work?
Well, I think it's a lot of us didn't sign the same contract that Tova did, fortunately. But it's like, I think the New Zealand TV industry is so small that if they were like, okay, if you don't Have You Been Paying Attention, you can't do 7 days, then it would be the same 5 comics on Have You Been Paying Attention every week, and then the same 5 comics on 7 days. So I think only maybe the if they're permanent if they're permanently on that TV show,
Like
I'm
Die,
pretty sure
for
they
example.
yeah, like I don't think Di could do Have You Been Paying Attention, but I'm not sure. But like, I don't know everyone's contracts, but yeah, like realistically, the New Zealand entertainment industry is too small, so they cannot like if they try to enforce that, then they'll be like, cool, I'm just going to do this like I'm going to do whichever one pays me better or
Yeah.
puts me on more, and then the other one will be kind of so it wouldn't balance out. Like there's not enough people to not have everyone who can do it on. Yeah, but even like I was supposed to do Have You Been Paying Attention the week after I did 7 days, but that was like we went into lockdown 2 days before the episode.
Right.
I was gutted. But I bought like a brand new expensive dress to wear that it was just like haunting me in my closet. But
Next one.
it was
Next time.
yeah. Oh yeah, I'll definitely saying it for the next one. But it's it's New Zealand's just too small, so they can't block us off, which is good.
If people want to find out more about you, you've got your Twitter there, Liv McKenzie. Yep. Is it the best place to find you? Is there anywhere else if you're going to direct people to what you've got going on, what you've got coming up, gigs, that sort of thing?
Oh God, I'm terrible at posting. I would say probably follow my Instagram. Maybe I post a bit more. I post like one tweet a month on Twitter. That's the dress, that pink one that I'm in the milkshake photo.
There?
I worked the Guildies. That's the one I was supposed to be wearing, maybe I'm paying attention. But I'll just wear it next time. But yeah, so my Instagram I probably post more like on my story and stuff. Twitter I post a little bit. And my Facebook page I usually post like if I'm on TV, but I don't. Yeah, I'm like terrible at posting. I didn't post. I think I just posted photos from the tour, but I didn't post any actual tour dates. I'm terrible. Okay, this conversation's made me realize I need to get my shit together. And
so if people want to find out about you, that's Liv_ing the dream, living the dream, but an underscore and living the dream. On Twitter, you're Liv McKenzie, Liv_McKenzie _. There's a Liv McKenzie that's in Scream, eh? Is that who's got all the real things?
Yes, there's a new character. I was Googling myself the other day because I wanted to see. I always want to know. I'm interested to see what comes up because especially when I started my career, I Googled myself. Zip. Now I come up first, I think. But now it goes Liv McKenzie Scream, and I'm like, no. I'm like, can you guys change your name? I don't think so. I really love the first Scream movie is like one of my favorite movies of all time, though. So I was pretty stoked that now
with Neve Campbell and those first ones, wasn't it? Neve Campbell,
yeah, and Drew Barrymore and Courtney Cox and David Arquette. So love that movie.
Well, people can follow you on those socials, and it's been a whole bunch of fun talking to you. It's one of those things that we're just kind of talking till we're finished. You know, that question that I had for you about TV3 versus TVNZ was kind of the one thing I had prepared to ask you about. I just got to make sure we're jamming it at the end there. Because the conversation went in a different direction. So I hope you had fun.
I had so much fun. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, no, and thank you for joining us. We really do appreciate it. And I'm sure we will keep our eyes on screens and see you shortly. But
hopefully.
Yeah, look, the reality is anytime you want to come back, we'd love to have you again. Liv McKenzie.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Pat.